I am sorry I am late. The text message from Rose sat illuminated on my screen. 3 days old, 3 days unread. The harsh white glare of the display stung my eyes in the dim lighting of the empty ballroom. Lavalier backup mic is live. Carol's voice crackled through my earpiece, sharp and sudden against the silence. I left it on the secondary stand, just in case someone needs to speak. I pressed the side button on my phone. The screen went black. The heavy, sweet scent of 14 massive floral arrangements hung in the air, almost suffocating. White roses. Paul had not asked what flowers I was choosing, but I chose his favorites anyway. Did you read it? Carol asked. She stood across the room, her tablet glowing against her black uniform. Her shoes made no sound on the thick carpet as she stepped closer. I read it, I said. Are you going to answer her? No. I reached out and adjusted a silver fork on the nearest table. I moved it a fraction of an inch to the left. My name is Sloane Avery. I am 40 years old, and I have run my own event planning company for 12 years. I know exactly what a disaster looks like 20 minutes before it happens. I know how to fix a collapsing cake, a drunk groomsman, a blown speaker system. I know how to control every single element in a room. But I did not know how to control the tight, pulling sensation behind my ribs. The heavy oak doors at the back of the room swung open. The brass hinges groaned. Paul walked in. He wore his dark suit, his silk tie hanging loose around his neck. He did not look at the ceiling draped in ivory fabric. He did not look at the 60 candles casting warm light against the walls, creating the exact shadow effect I had spent 3 weeks designing. He looked down at his phone. Looks decent, he said. Decent. I had spent 47 hours meticulously coordinating this engagement party. Our engagement party. I had argued with the hotel manager for 20 minutes to ensure the room temperature stayed at exactly 68 degrees. Patrick and Rose are pulling up right now, Paul added. He finally slid the phone into his pocket. His eyes met mine. They were calm, unbothered. The eyes of a man who always knew exactly where he stood in any room. Everything good, everything is right on schedule, I said. He nodded and walked toward the bar to pour himself a drink. I turned away and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. Down on the street below Patrick's black sedan idled by the valet stand, the passenger door swung open. Rose stepped out onto the pavement. She reached up to adjust her coat, and the streetlights caught a flash of silver on her left wrist. A thin platinum bracelet. I recognized the design instantly. Cartier. 7 months ago, I had seen a line item on Paul's credit card statement. $2,340. When I asked him about it, he barely looked up from his coffee. He told me it was a birthday gift for his mother. His mother only wore yellow gold. I knew that because I had spent the entire week of Christmas with her. Rose turned toward the hotel entrance, the platinum catching the light a second time. My jaw ached. I had been grinding my teeth since the moment Paul walked into the room. I should have paid attention to that detail 7 months ago. I did not. 30 minutes later, the room was full. 30 guests, friends, colleagues, distant family members. I stood next to Paul, near the entrance, shaking hands, smiling at the exact right intensity, recalling names of people I had met exactly once. The professional autopilot took over. The air grew thick with the smell of expensive perfumes and roasted almonds. Ice clinked against glass. The background music played at exactly 62 decibels. I had specifically requested that volume so people could hold conversations without shouting. Rose and Patrick walked through the doors at 12 minutes past 7. Right on time. Rose looked at me immediately. Her eyes held the frantic energy of someone who was preparing to say something heavy. Then Paul stepped forward. He wrapped his arms around her in a deep, familiar hug. The kind of embrace you give your best friend's wife. Perfectly normal. Perfectly casual. The moment passed and Rose's frantic energy vanished behind a polite smile. "Rose, you look great," Paul said. He stepped back and clapped Patrick on the shoulder. "Thanks," Rose said. She did not look at Paul. She looked at me. "Sloane, did you decorate this room yourself? It is beautiful." "I do this for a living," I said. "I know how to make it look like it did not take any effort." A beat of silence fell between us. Rose understood that I was not just talking about the flowers. I looked down at her wrist. The bracelet sat loosely against her skin. Simple, elegant, and entirely out of place for a woman who repeatedly complained about her husband's strict budget. I looked away. I committed the image to memory. I did nothing else. Patrick stood next to Paul. The two men spoke in low voices. Patrick let out a loud, booming laugh when the conversation shifted to their weekend golf game. It was the laugh of two men who had known each other for 20 years. The laugh of someone who did not need to explain the context of his jokes. I watched Patrick sip his bourbon, his eyes crinkling at the corners. I wondered how much he actually knew about the things his business partner bought. Dinner concluded smoothly. The plates were cleared. The ambient lighting shifted to a slightly warmer tone right on cue. I picked up the primary microphone and walked up to the acrylic podium near the front of the room. I had not been asked to give a speech. I had planned this moment since last week. A toast from the bride-to-be. I had written it out on a small white index card. 7 sentences. Exactly 90 seconds of speaking time. 30 faces turned toward me. The warm spotlight hit my shoulders. The scent of melting candle wax mixed with the lingering aroma of white wine. The clinking of silverware stopped as people realized this was a moment for silence. I tapped the microphone. The sound system was flawless. "I have planned 87 weddings in my career," I began. My voice was calm and measured, the voice of a woman who had directed hundreds of events. And there is one thing I always tell my brides. The most beautiful wedding is not the perfect wedding. It is the most real wedding. I paused, looking down at my card, preparing to deliver the next line. "Let's stop." The voice came from the second table. Paul. His tone was light, cheerful, like he was telling a joke at a casual barbecue. "You are terrible at that, babe. Let me do it. 1 beat, 2 beats. Patrick erupted into laughter first. It was a loud, unthinking sound, the reflex of a man who was accustomed to validating Paul in every possible situation. 3 other people at the table chuckled nervously because they did not know what else to do. The laughter rippled outward, small waves of uncomfortable sound spreading across the room. I stood at the podium, my hand gripped the microphone. The metal felt cold against my palm. 30 people stared at me. This was the exact scenario I had been trained to handle. The moment when an event derails from the schedule and the coordinator has to navigate the tension. I knew 4 different ways to diffuse this. I had used all 4 of them in my career. I could laugh softly. I could say he was right. I could hand the microphone over, walk back to my seat, and the evening would continue seamlessly. But something was crawling beneath the surface of my skin. I thought about the text message from Rose. 3 days ago. "I am sorry I am late." Late. Not that she needed to talk. Late. As if she owed me this conversation from a long time ago. I thought about the Cartier bracelet. $2,340. I thought about Patrick's unthinking, booming laugh. He had laughed like that before. He had laughed like that while covering for Paul many, many times. I did not smile. I placed the white index card down on the podium. Gently. I was in no rush. I looked at Paul for 1 long second. Then I shifted my gaze to his right. "Interesting," I said into the microphone. My voice was entirely normal. I did not sound angry. I did not sound shaken. I sounded exactly as I did when I told the catering staff that table 4 needed more water. "Patrick, you have a great laugh. Is your wife good at that too? I am just curious." The room froze. The background music continued playing. 62 decibels. The Norah Jones track. I had selected myself. But no one was listening to the music. The heavy scent of roses seemed to vanish, replaced by the sharp, metallic taste of adrenaline in the back of my throat. 60 wine glasses sat untouched on the tables. Patrick stopped laughing. His mouth hung slightly open. Paul stared at me. His casual, easygoing posture dissolved. For the first time since I had met him, he looked like a man who was not entirely sure what he was looking at. And then, from the far side of the room, there was the sharp, scraping sound of a wooden chair sliding back against the hardwood floor. Rose stood up. She did not move quickly. She did not move slowly. She moved with the deliberate intention of a woman who had already made her decision and had no reason to rush. Her glass of white wine remained full on the table. She did not look at her husband. She did not look at Paul. She kept her eyes fixed firmly on the door. I stepped out of the ballroom. I did not run. I did not rush. Knowing exactly when to leave a room before the air becomes too heavy is a learned skill. The hallway lights were a harsh, cool white. They felt clinical after the warm glow of the candles inside. My heels sank into the thick hotel carpet, swallowing the sound of my footsteps. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window at the end of the corridor. Down below, the streetlights of Louisville glowed against the dark pavement. Cars moved slowly through the intersection. Everything out there was completely normal. Footsteps sounded behind me. Quick. Light. Rose. Sloan, she said. Her voice was breathless. I knew you would come out here, I said. I kept my eyes on the street below. I am sorry about the text message. I should have told you. You should have told me sooner. I turned around to face her. 4 months ago, 6 months, when exactly is early enough, Rose? A long beat of silence settled between us. The faint bass of the Norah Jones track thumped softly through the heavy ballroom doors. I knew when he bought the ring, Rose said quietly. I thought it was over. He told me it was over. And you believed him. I wanted to believe him. Her voice did not hold an apology. It carried the dragging weight of sheer exhaustion, the kind of fatigue that comes from carrying a secret until it breaks your spine. 4 months ago, I found text messages on his old phone. He left it at our house after a poker night. They were not messages to me. I watched her face carefully. Not to you. Not to you either, Rose said. Someone else entirely. The architecture of the story I had built in my head began to crack. I had believed a very specific narrative. Paul loved Rose once. Then he met me. Then he chose me. It was messy, but it made a twisted kind of sense. Now that structure collapsed into something much worse. Paul did not choose me over her. Paul just added me to the rotation. Do you have proof? I asked. Rose opened her small velvet clutch. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times, and held it out to me. Screenshots. 7 months ago. The timestamps were clear. The language was explicit enough to leave no room for misunderstanding. I did not send these to Patrick, Rose said, because he already knew. I do not know how much he knew, but he knew enough. Patrick knew. He and Paul are partners in the clinic. I think Patrick just arranged his priorities. I looked down at the bright screen. The glowing text bubbles. The dates. I did not feel the urge to cry. I felt a cold, sharp clarity spreading through my chest. It was the exact sensation of a strict wedding schedule falling apart, instantly triggering my crisis management instincts. Okay, this is the reality of the situation. What do we do now? I handed the phone back to her. Rose, tell me everything you know, from the very beginning. She spoke for 10 minutes. 14 months. That was how long it had been going on. It started 3 months before Paul even met me. Rose had known Paul through Patrick for years. She did not even know Paul had started dating me until the day he told her they needed to end things. Then came my engagement ring. Then came 11 months of absolute silence between them. While she spoke, I looked past her shoulder. Through the glass panels of the ballroom doors, I could see Paul. He was standing near the center table talking to a group of guests. He was smiling. He held his drink with a relaxed grip. He was managing the room just as flawlessly as I ever could. Patrick stepped up beside him. I watched Patrick lean in close, his posture rigid. Patrick muttered something. Paul shook his head, once a tight, dismissive gesture. Patrick raised a hand, pressing it flat against Paul's chest, speaking faster. Paul finally nodded. Near the soundboard in the far corner, Carol stood perfectly still. Her earpiece was secured. Her eyes were fixed squarely on the two men. She did not look away. The backup microphone on the acrylic podium was only a few feet from where Paul and Patrick stood. "Have you told Patrick about the new messages?" I asked, bringing my attention back to Rose. "No," she said. "I am afraid he will not believe me. Or he will believe me, but he will protect Paul anyway." "You are probably right," I said. "Business partners are never neutral witnesses." 20 minutes later, the hallway was empty. Rose had gone down to the lobby. I walked back toward the ballroom, but a heavy hand caught my elbow. "Paul!" He steered me gently but firmly into a small side room near the coat check. It was a storage closet for the hotel banquet staff. The heavy door clicked shut behind us, completely cutting off the music. The fluorescent lights above hummed with a harsh buzzing sound. The air smelled of industrial laundry detergent and the thick plastic wrap used to cover stacked chairs. There were no candles in here, no ivory drapes, none of the careful illusions I had built. "I sent the guests away," Paul said. "I told them you had a terrible migraine." He had not asked anyone for help. He had made a decision and executed it, managing the narrative just like he managed his orthopedic clinic. "You heard what Rose said out there," he added. "It was not a question." "I heard enough to know how to ask the right questions," I said. I found a bare folding chair and sat down. My legs felt strangely heavy. "First question. You bought a bracelet at Cartier 7 months ago. Your mother only wears yellow gold." Paul stood very still. The buzzing of the overhead lights seemed to grow louder. "She told you a story," Paul said slowly, "and she told it like it is the only truth. Are you denying it? I am telling you that there is context you do not have." He took a step closer, lowering his voice into that soothing, measured tone he used with nervous patience. "Rose is not the person you think she is." I stared at him. This was the space where he operated best. He did not issue a flat denial. That would be too easy to disprove. Instead, he redefined the framework of reality. He was turning Rose into an unstable, unreliable narrator. He was turning himself into a victim of a frantic woman's obsession. I had sat through 200 pre-wedding counseling sessions with stressed couples. I knew this pattern inside and out from the perspective of an observer. This was the first time I was sitting on the inside of it. "So what is the context?" I asked. Rose could not accept it when we ended things. He let out a heavy, tired sigh. This is not the first time she has caused a situation. She texted me 3 days ago, before tonight, before any situation happened. "Sloan, listen to me." "Paul." I kept my voice perfectly level, not a single decibel higher than his. "Are you explaining this or are you apologizing? Because those two things look very different and I need to know which one you are doing." A long pause stretched out in the cramped, sterile room. He looked at my face, searching for a crack, a tear, any sign of the emotional breakdown he was fully prepared to manage. He found nothing. "I am sorry," he finally said. "I am sorry about Rose. I am sorry about tonight. You deserve much better than what I just put you through." I heard the words, but they landed wrong. It was the apology I thought I wanted, but the structure was entirely hollow. He was apologizing for Rose. He was apologizing for the disruption of the evening. He did not apologize for lying to me for 14 months. He did not apologize for the Cartier bracelet. He did not apologize for the third woman in those text messages. "I need a night," I said. I stood up from the folding chair. "I will go home with you tonight. We will sleep. We will talk tomorrow." Paul nodded. The tension instantly drained out of his shoulders. Relief washed over his face. He thought I was giving him a pathway to forgiveness. He did not realize I was just securing 12 hours to figure out my next move. I woke up before the sun the next morning. The apartment was completely silent. Paul was still asleep in the bedroom, breathing in a slow, steady rhythm. I sat on a stool in the kitchen, holding a mug of coffee that had gone completely cold. I unlocked my phone and pulled up the photos Carol had taken before the guests left. I zoomed in on the picture of Rose standing near the bar. The platinum band around her wrist became slightly pixelated as I magnified the image, but the distinct shape was undeniable. Cartier, platinum. My phone buzzed against the marble counter. The sudden vibration made my teeth clack together. Patrick. I accepted the call and lifted the phone to my ear. Sloan Patrick said. His voice was overly bright, straining hard for a casual tone. I am sorry for calling so early. You are calling early because you want to speak to me before I speak to anyone else. It was a statement of fact, not a question. A heavy beat of silence traveled through the line. Rose is not doing well right now, Patrick said carefully. She has a tendency to dramatize things when she is stressed. Her imagination runs a bit wild. Are you telling me that your wife is not a reliable source? I am telling you that her story lacks the proper context. I stared at the cold black coffee in my mug. I heard Patrick speaking, but I was also hearing Paul from the storage closet last night. Two different men, two different sets of vocabulary. The exact same defensive architecture. They were not denying the actions. They were attacking my perception of the reality. All right, Patrick, I said smoothly. Thank you for the call. I tapped the red button and set the phone face down. I did not need to hear any more. 2 hours later, I walked into a small coffee shop, 3 blocks from the Brown Hotel. Rose had agreed to meet me here. The loud hiss of the espresso machine filled the small space. The rich, bitter smell of roasted coffee beans hung thick in the air. A bright square of morning sunlight spilled across the wooden table where Rose was sitting. I knew something was wrong the exact moment I looked at her. Her eyes were different from last night. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by a tight, brittle panic. She kept her purse strapped tightly across her chest. She did not lean forward. She sat like a woman preparing to brace for an impact. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. Rose. I have been thinking about it, she said immediately. Her words tumbled out fast and uneven. I have reconsidered. He called you. Patrick called me, yes. And he is worried. She looked down at the scratched surface of the wooden table. He is worried about our marriage. He said if I continue to push this narrative, he will view it as a direct threat to our family. You do not have to explain to me what Patrick said. Sloan, please. You are taking it back. A long, painful silence settled between us. The barista called out a name in the background. Someone dropped a ceramic mug on a counter, the sharp clatter ringing in my ears. I do not have solid proof, Rose whispered. Those pictures are just old messages. There are no names attached. Paul can explain them away easily. You explained them to me last night, with enough detail that nobody else needs to explain a thing. I know. I do. But if I stand up as a witness, my marriage will be over. I did not feel a sudden surge of anger. I just looked at her, watching a woman fold herself into a smaller shape to fit inside a broken box. Rose, I said, my voice quiet enough that only she could hear. You know what Paul did. You also know exactly what Patrick knew, and you know he chose to stay quiet. And right now you are choosing to protect the very same marriage that your husband used as a shield for his silence. She closed her eyes. It is mine to lose. Yes, it is. I stood up and pushed my chair in, and this life is mine. I do not blame you, but I am not waiting for you anymore, either. I walked out of the coffee shop. The bright Louisville sun hit my face, warm and unforgiving. I had no backup plan. I had no witnesses. I had a blurry picture of a bracelet and a handful of retracted statements. I needed something that did not depend on the shifting loyalty of frightened people. At 2 in the afternoon, I sat on the floor of my private office. 47 heavy, hardbound event folders surrounded me in a messy circle. Each folder contained the meticulous plans for a wedding I had successfully executed. I did not know why I had pulled them all off the shelves. Perhaps because this room was the only place where the world still made logical sense to me. Carol sat in the leather armchair near the door. She did not ask what I was doing. 12 years, I said. I picked up a thick white folder and traced the embossed lettering on the cover. I can tell when a marriage is going to fail just by looking at the planning spreadsheet. I see the patterns. A bride tries to control the exact color of the napkins because she is terrified of losing control over the things she actually cares about. I wrote an article on that exact phenomenon. You are talking about yourself, Carol said quietly. I knew something was off the night he proposed, I admitted. The words tasted like dry ash. He got down on one knee in the kitchen. He did not have a ring. He said I did not need a blue box, that I only needed to know he was absolutely sure. I translated that into romance. Or you wanted to translate it into that Carol offered. That was the worst part. It was not just that Paul had betrayed me. It was that I had built an entire structural framework to help him hide it. I organized the events. I checked the lists. I demanded 68 degrees for the room temperature. And I called that love. I dropped the folder. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. Carol. I looked up at her. Did you record the audio files last night? Carol did not speak right away. She looked at me, her face completely unreadable. The system auto-saves to the cloud in real time, she said slowly. The file is large enough to cover the entire evening. That includes the backup microphone on the acrylic podium, the one nobody thought was live. The room went entirely still. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning unit in the ceiling. Paul and Patrick were talking in the hallway right next to that podium, Carol said. Between 8:35 and 8:50, I felt a strange fluttering sensation in my stomach. Have you listened to it? No, she said. The file belongs to you. I nodded and pushed myself up from the floor. I walked over to my desk and sat down in my leather chair. Send it to me. Carol tapped her tablet. A notification chimed on my laptop a second later. I reached into the top drawer and pulled out my noise-canceling headphones. I plugged them in and settled the padded cups over my ears. I clicked the audio file, and I began to listen. The audio file crackled in my ears. I sat perfectly still in my leather chair. For the first few minutes, there was only the ambient noise of the ballroom, the clinking of glasses, the low murmur of 30 guests talking, the soft piano notes of the background music. Then the distinct sound of footsteps approaching the acrylic podium. Two voices cut through the static. How much does she know? It was Patrick. His voice was hushed but urgent. Nothing solid, Paul replied. Rose only has old text messages. Rose will not do anything. I will handle her. She is smart, Paul said. He was talking about me. His tone was tight, clipped. If she talks to a lawyer. You are not legally married, Patrick interrupted. There is no prenuptial agreement. There is no joint real estate. She has nothing to sue for. I stopped the recording. The timestamp read 14 minutes and 32 seconds. I pulled the headphones off and set them on the desk. The silence in my office felt heavier now. She has nothing to sue for. That was not the statement of a man who realized he had made a terrible mistake. That was not a man burdened by guilt. That was a physician assessing liability. He was running a risk management protocol on our relationship. I closed the laptop. The screen snapped shut with a sharp click. I picked up my cold coffee and drank the last bitter drop. I did not need a courtroom. I did not need Patrick to grow a conscience, and I did not need Rose to act as my witness. I had exactly what I needed. At 4:30 in the afternoon, I picked up my phone and dialed Paul. He answered on the second ring. Sloan, he said. His voice was soft, cautious. We need to talk clearly, I said. I will come to your apartment at 7 o'clock tonight. Okay. Yes. I will be here. I could hear the immediate relief in his exhalation. He thought I was coming over to negotiate a truce. He thought the 12 hours of silence meant I was moving toward forgiveness. I did not correct him. At 5 o'clock, I called Rose. "Hello," her voice trembled. She sounded like she had been crying. "You do not need to do anything," I told her. My voice was completely flat. "I do not need a witness, but I want you to know something. I am not angry with you, and your marriage is yours. I am not going to be the one to break it." A long, shaky breath came through the speaker. "I am sorry. I truly am." "I know," I said. I pressed the end button. At exactly 7 o'clock, I unlocked the door to Paul's apartment. The space looked exactly as it always did. Spotless, expensive, minimalist. There was not a single trace of my existence on any surface. No shoes by the door, no jacket on the hook. I had noticed this the very first time I came here, but I never mentioned it. A professional event coordinator does not leave a footprint. Now standing in the entryway, I realized my profession had nothing to do with it. The rich smell of freshly brewed coffee drifted from the kitchen. The overhead lights were dimmed. He had adjusted the dimmer switches to create a warm, intimate atmosphere. He was still trying to manage the environment. He was still trying to guide the narrative. Paul walked out of the kitchen. He wore a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "Thank you for coming," he said. He stopped a few feet away, leaving a respectful distance between us. "Last night I began ignoring his greeting. You told me you were sorry for Rose. And you were sorry for the disruption of the evening. I am. And I want to." "You did not apologize for lying to me for 14 months, I said. My voice did not rise. It remained perfectly level. "You did not apologize for the Cartier bracelet you claimed was for your mother. You did not apologize for the third woman in those text messages." Paul slowly set his coffee mug down on the glass coffee table. The ceramic clinked against the glass. "Sloan. And last night at 47 minutes past 8, I continued, you said to Patrick, 'She has nothing to sue for.'" The room went entirely dead. The heavy ticking of the wall clock suddenly sounded like a hammer against wood. The smell of roasted coffee beans turned sour in the back of my throat. Paul stood completely frozen. He did not look like a man searching for the right words to apologize. He looked exactly like a man calculating the trajectory of a falling object. "The backup microphone on the podium was live all night," I said. "The audio file automatically saves to my company cloud." I watched his eyes dart toward the door, then back to my face. The mask of the caring, misunderstood fiancé shattered completely. "What are you going to do with that file?" he asked. That was the entire truth of the man standing in front of me. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not beg me to listen to his side. He asked what I was going to do. He was still assessing the risk. "Nothing," I said. "I am going to do nothing with it." He let out a short, sharp breath. I reached for my right hand. I pulled the diamond ring off my finger. I had never worn it on my left hand, because we were not married yet. I kept my own strict rules. I placed the ring on the glass table next to his coffee mug. "But I am leaving," I told him. "And you will not call me. You will not contact Carol. You will not contact Rose for any reason regarding me." "Sloan, be reasonable. You will follow those instructions not because I am asking you nicely," I said, stepping backward toward the door. "You will do it because if you do not, I will send that audio file to the hospital board of directors. I will ask them exactly what they think about a senior partner with such spectacular errors in judgment. I did not know if I would actually do it. That did not matter. What mattered was that he did not know. He could not calculate that risk." Paul looked down at the table. "I want the ring back." "Do you need it for your next plan, or do you just want it for the appraisal value?" I asked. I did not wait for an answer. "Keep it. Engagement gifts legally belong to the recipient." I turned the handle and walked out. I pulled the door shut behind me without looking back. The Louisville air hit my face cool and remarkably ordinary. I stood on the sidewalk for a full minute, I did not stand there out of hesitation. I stood there because I needed to feel the solid concrete under my shoes. I needed to know the ground I was standing on was actually real. 2 days later, I drove back to the Brown Hotel. Monday morning is the part of the event industry that nobody ever thinks about. After the guests leave and the lights go out, someone has to come back and pack away the illusion. That someone was always me. I pushed open the heavy oak doors of the ballroom. The room was empty. The chairs were stacked upside down on the tables, waiting for the cleaning crew. The 14 massive floral arrangements were still there. The white roses had started to wilt their petals, turning brown at the edges. The heavy, rotting sweetness filled the space. I decided I would not throw them away just yet. The morning light poured through the tall windows. It was entirely different from the warm candlelight of Friday night. The harsh morning sun did not forgive, and it did not hide anything. It illuminated the scuff marks on the floor and the spilled wine stains on the tablecloths. Carol walked into the room carrying a large plastic storage bin. "Are you finished in here?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "I need a minute." Carol nodded once and walked back out into the hallway. She did not ask questions. She knew that when I asked for a minute, I meant much more than a minute. I looked at the acrylic podium. The microphone still stood there. The black cord was neatly coiled around the base. I had installed that tiny piece of equipment on Friday afternoon. I had checked the audio levels. I had adjusted the gain. I put it there just in case someone needed to speak. It was a simple professional reflex. It meant absolutely nothing at the time. I pulled an unstacked chair from the nearest table and sat down. For the first time in 2 days, I sat with absolutely nothing to coordinate, nothing to fix, nothing to adjust. 87 weddings. I could predict when a marriage would fail just by looking at a catering spreadsheet. Yet I had planned my own celebration with 47 glaring errors in the blueprint, and I had simply chosen not to mark them. That did not make me stupid. It just made me human. My phone vibrated in my pocket. The sudden buzz broke the quiet of the empty ballroom. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. Not Paul. Not Patrick. It was a potential client. Someone who had filled out the contact form on my website over the weekend, looking for a consultation for a spring wedding. I stared at the glowing numbers. The smell of wilting flowers hung thick in the air. The morning light cast long shadows across the scratched hardwood floor. Out in the hallway, I could hear the faint sound of Carol dragging a heavy equipment box across the carpet. I slid my thumb across the screen and brought the phone to my ear. "Avery Events," I said. My voice was calm, precise, the exact tone of a woman who had done this for 12 years and knew exactly how to do it well. "This is Sloan." A nervous voice on the other end began to explain a vision for an outdoor ceremony in May. "Yes," I said smoothly. "We still have availability for the spring season. Tell me exactly what you are looking for." I reached into my bag and pulled out my notebook. I clicked my black ink pen. The heavy acrylic podium stood silent across the room. The ring was no longer on my right hand. I began to write down the details. I was still doing my job. I was not doing it because I had no other options. I was doing it because this was the life I had built with my own 2 hands, and absolutely no one was going to take it away from me. The padded cups of my noise-canceling headphones blocked out the faint hum of the city traffic below my office window. I sat perfectly still in my leather chair. My finger hovered over the trackpad of my laptop. The audio file Carol had sent me sat in the center of the screen. A single, solid block of sound data holding the entire truth of my life. I clicked play. For the first few minutes, there was nothing but the ambient noise of a successful engagement party, the delicate clinking of crystal wine glasses, the low, pleasant murmur of 30 guests engaged in polite conversation, the soft piano chords of the background music I had personally selected. It was the sound of a flawless event, the horrible, perfect illusion. Then the audio shifted. The background noise grew slightly muffled as heavy footsteps approached the acrylic podium near the side corridor. The rustle of expensive fabric. Two voices cut through the static, sharp and distinct. How much does she know it was Patrick? His voice lacked the booming, unthinking joviality he used when holding a glass of bourbon. It was hushed, urgent, nothing solid, Paul replied. His tone was tight, clipped, completely devoid of the warm charm he projected to the room just moments before. Rose only has old text messages. There are no names. Nothing I cannot explain away. Rose will not do anything, Patrick said quickly. I will handle her. Sloane is smart, Paul countered. The way he said my name sent a cold ache straight through my jaw. He said it the way a general discusses an opposing commander. If she connects the timeline, if she talks to a lawyer, you are not legally married, Patrick interrupted. There is no prenuptial agreement. There is no joint real estate. The business is protected. She has absolutely nothing to sue for. I pressed the space bar. The recording stopped. The silence in my office rushed back in heavy and thick. The timestamp on the screen read 14 minutes and 32 seconds. I pulled the headphones off and set them gently on the edge of the desk. I did not throw them. I did not scream. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. She has nothing to sue for. That was not the statement of a man who realized he had broken the heart of the woman he was supposed to marry. That was not a man burdened by guilt or wrestling with a terrible mistake. That was a physician assessing liability. He was running a risk management protocol on our relationship. I looked at the cold cup of coffee sitting near my keyboard. I did not need a courtroom. I did not need Patrick to miraculously grow a conscience, and I certainly did not need Rose to act as my witness. The frantic search for leverage was over. I had exactly what I needed. At exactly 4:30, the afternoon sunlight began to stretch across the hardwood floor of my office. I picked up my phone and dialed Paul. He answered on the second ring. Sloane, he said. His voice was soft, cautious, carefully calibrated to sound relieved but respectful. We need to talk clearly, I said. My voice betrayed nothing. I will come to your apartment at 7 o'clock tonight. Okay. Yes. I will be here. I am glad you called. I could hear the immediate release of tension in his exhalation. He thought the 12 hours of silence meant I had processed the shock and was moving toward forgiveness. He assumed I was coming over to negotiate a truce. I did not correct him. I ended the call. At 5 o'clock, I pulled up another contact and pressed the green icon. Hello, Rose answered. Her voice trembled. She sounded fragile, like a piece of glass resting on the edge of a table. You do not need to do anything, I told her. My tone was completely flat, empty of any anger or expectation. I do not need a witness anymore, but I want you to know something. I am not angry with you, Rose. Your marriage is yours. I am not going to be the one to break it. A long, shaky breath came through the speaker. I could picture her sitting in her kitchen, trapped inside the walls she and Patrick had built around themselves. I am sorry, she whispered. I truly am. I know, I said. I pressed the end button. I slipped the phone into my pocket and grabbed my coat. At 7 o'clock, I unlocked the door to Paul's apartment. The space looked exactly as it always did. Spotless, expensive, minimalist. There was not a single trace of my existence on any surface. No shoes kicked off by the door. No jacket hanging over the back of a dining chair. I had noticed this the very first time I came here, but I had never mentioned it. A professional event coordinator does not leave a footprint. We build the environment and fade into the background. Standing in the entryway now, I realized my profession had absolutely nothing to do with it. He just never made room for me. The rich, dark smell of freshly brewed coffee drifted from the kitchen. The overhead lights in the living room were dimmed. He had adjusted the dimmer switches to create a warm, intimate atmosphere. He was still trying to manage the environment. He was still trying to guide the narrative. Paul walked out of the hallway. He wore a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Casual, but put together. vulnerable but in control. "Thank you for coming," he said. He stopped a few feet away, leaving a respectful, non-threatening distance between us. "Last night I began completely ignoring his greeting. You told me you were sorry for Rose, and you said you were sorry for the disruption of the evening." "I am. Sloan, I want to." "You did not apologize for lying to me for 14 months, I said." My voice did not rise. It remained perfectly level, slicing through the quiet room. "You did not apologize for the Cartier bracelet you claimed was a birthday gift for a mother who only wears yellow gold. You did not apologize for the third woman in those text messages." Paul slowly set his coffee mug down on the glass coffee table. The ceramic clinked sharply against the thick glass. His easy posture vanished. "Sloan, listen to me. And last night at 47 minutes past 8, I continued, you said to Patrick. She has nothing to sue for." The room went entirely dead. The heavy ticking of the wall clock suddenly sounded like a hammer striking wood. The smell of roasted coffee beans turned sour in the back of my throat. Paul stood completely frozen. He did not look like a man searching for the right words to apologize. He looked exactly like a man calculating the trajectory of a falling object. The backup microphone on the acrylic podium was live all night, I said. "The audio file automatically saves to my company cloud in real time." I watched his eyes dart toward the door, then back to my face. The mask of the caring, misunderstood fiancé shattered, completely falling away in jagged pieces. "What are you going to do with that file?" he asked. There it was. The entire truth of the man standing in front of me, compressed into a single sentence. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not beg me to listen to his side of the story. He asked what I was going to do. He was assessing the risk. "Nothing," I said. "I am going to do nothing with it." He let out a short, sharp breath, his shoulders dropping a fraction of an inch. I reached for my right hand. I pulled the diamond ring off my finger. I had never worn it on my left hand because we were not legally married yet. I kept my own strict rules about those things. I placed the ring on the glass table next to his coffee mug. The diamond caught the dim light. "But I am leaving," I told him. "And you will not call me. You will not contact Carol. You will not contact Rose for any reason regarding me. Sloan, be reasonable. We can handle this. You will follow those instructions not because I am asking you nicely," I said. I took a step backward toward the heavy front door. "You will do it because if you do not, I will send that audio file directly to the hospital board of directors. I will ask them exactly what they think about a senior orthopedic partner with such spectacular errors in judgment." I did not know if I would actually do it. That did not matter. What mattered was that he did not know. He could not calculate that variable. He could not control that risk. Paul looked down at the table. He stared at the ring for a long moment. "I want the ring back. Do you need it for your next carefully planned exit strategy, or do you just want it for the appraisal value?" I asked. I did not wait for an answer. "Keep it. Engagement gifts legally belong to the recipient, but I have no use for a prop." I turned the brass handle and walked out. I pulled the door shut behind me until it clicked into the frame. I did not look back. The Louisville night air hit my face as I stepped out of the lobby. It was cool and remarkably ordinary. I stood on the concrete sidewalk for a full minute. I did not stand there out of hesitation. I stood there because I needed to feel the solid ground under the soles of my shoes. I needed to know the earth I was standing on was actually real. 2 days later, I drove back to the Brown Hotel. Monday morning is the part of the event industry that nobody ever thinks about. After the guests leave, after the candles burn down to the wick, after the lights go out, someone has to come back and pack away the illusion. That someone was always me. I pushed open the heavy oak doors of the ballroom. The room was empty. The chairs were stacked upside down on the round tables, waiting for the cleaning crew to sweep the carpets. The 14 massive floral arrangements were still standing along the windows. The white roses had started to wilt their outer petals, turning a bruised brown at the edges. A heavy, rotting sweetness filled the space. I decided I would not throw them away just yet. The morning light poured through the tall windows. It was entirely different from the warm, forgiving candlelight of Friday night. The harsh morning sun did not excuse anything. It illuminated the scuff marks on the hardwood floor and the spilled wine stains on the white tablecloths. It showed the room exactly as it was. Carol walked through the side doors carrying a large plastic storage bin. She set it down with a heavy thud. "Are you finished in here?" she asked, wiping her hands on her dark pants. "Not yet," I said. "I need a minute." Carol nodded once and walked back out into the hallway. She did not ask questions. She knew that when I asked for a minute, I meant much more than 60 seconds. I pulled an unstacked chair from the nearest table and sat down. I looked toward the front of the room. The acrylic podium still stood there. The backup microphone was still clipped to the stand, the black cord neatly coiled around the base. I had installed that tiny piece of equipment on Friday afternoon. I had checked the audio levels. I had adjusted the gain. I put it there just in case someone needed to speak. It was a simple, professional reflex. It meant absolutely nothing at the time. For the first time in 2 days, I sat in a chair with absolutely nothing to coordinate, nothing to fix, nothing to adjust. 87 weddings. I could predict when a marriage would fail just by looking at the color-coded tabs on a catering spreadsheet. Yet I had planned my own life with 47 glaring errors in the blueprint, and I had simply chosen to ignore every single one of them. I had spent 30 years memorizing a map to a country that did not exist. That did not make me a failure. It just made me human. My phone vibrated in my jacket pocket. The sudden sharp buzz broke the absolute quiet of the empty ballroom. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. It was an unknown number with a local area code. Not Paul. Not Patrick. It was a potential client. Someone who had filled out the contact form on my website over the weekend, looking for a consultation for a spring wedding. I stared at the glowing numbers. The smell of wilting flowers hung thick in the cold air. The bright morning light cast long, sharp shadows across the floor. Out in the hallway, I could hear the faint sound of Carol dragging a heavy equipment box across the carpet. I slid my thumb across the screen and brought the phone to my ear. "Avery Events," I said. My voice was calm, precise. The exact tone of a woman who had done this for 12 years and knew exactly how to do it well. "This is Sloan." A nervous, excited voice on the other end began to explain a vision for an outdoor ceremony in May. "Yes," I said smoothly, leaning back in the chair. "We still have availability for the spring season. Tell me exactly what you are looking for." I reached into my bag and pulled out my notebook. I clicked my black ink pen. The heavy acrylic podium stood silent across the room. The ring was no longer on my right hand. I began to write down the details. I was still doing my job. I was not doing it because I had no other options, or because I was trapped in a box someone else built. I was doing it because this was the life I chose right from the very beginning, and absolutely no one was going to take it away from me. Have you ever looked at a picture-perfect moment in your life and realized you were the only one holding it together? We all want the fairy tale. We want the flawless relationship, the secure future, and the life that looks undeniably good from the outside. We spend years drafting the blueprints, arranging the details, and making sure everything aligns perfectly. But sometimes, in our desperate attempt to keep the aesthetic flawless, we deliberately ignore the structural damage rotting underneath the floorboards. The hardest lesson to take away from this story, and perhaps a reality you are grappling with right now, is that you absolutely cannot plan your way out of someone else's deception. Present. You can control the temperature of the room, you can arrange the beautiful white roses, and you can dictate the daily schedule. But you can never control another person and their character. When people show you who they really are, usually through a tiny, careless crack in their carefully constructed mask, you have to find the courage to believe them the very first time. Do not translate their glaring red flags into misunderstood romance. Do not mistake their calculated risk management for genuine love. If you find yourself constantly bending your own reality to make their inconsistent stories make sense, you are no longer building a partnership. You are simply managing an ongoing crisis. Furthermore, this story teaches us a harsh truth about the people around us. Sometimes the deepest betrayal does not just come from the person who lied to you, but from the community of enablers who knew the truth and chose to protect their own comfort over your sanity. You cannot wait for frightened people to act bravely on your behalf. You do not need a confession from the person who hurt you to know you have been profoundly betrayed. You do not need a dramatic courtroom victory, and you certainly do not need their permission to walk out the door. Your intuition is the most accurate piece of evidence you will ever hold in your hands. Trust it. Stop trying to aggressively edit the warning signs out of your life just so the final picture looks acceptable to the rest of the world. Walking away from a beautiful, comfortable lie is the only way you will ever have the space to build a beautiful truth. Now, take a moment to look inward. Have you ever stayed in a toxic situation much longer than you should have simply because the arrangement looked good on paper? Have you ever ignored your own gut feeling, that tight pulling sensation in your chest, because dismantling the truth felt entirely too exhausting to survive? When did you finally realize that you were trying to organize a disaster instead of walking away from it? And how did you find the strength to step back into the harsh morning light of reality? I invite you to share your experiences in the comments below. We have all been the architect of our own heartbreak at some point in our lives, attempting to build a home on a foundation of secret. There is immense healing power in realizing you are never alone in that struggle. Your story, your survival, might be the exact blueprint someone else desperately needs today to finally drop the illusion, leave the keys on the table, and walk out of a room that no longer serves them.